So good, Deputy Clerk?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Long-Term Care Redevelopment Planning Task Force on July 25th, 2024 at 1 p.m. So calling to order, Madam Deputy Clerk, I know that we have a motion here to entertain in order to identify that we have done a change of time. So it's recommended that the Long-Term Care Redevelopment Planning Task Force waives the rules of the procedure regarding notice and amends the agenda for the state to provide for a 1 p.m. meeting start date. May I ask for a mover? Thank you, Councillor McKay and Councillor Mackey, seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, so Madam Deputy Clerk, does that allow us to continue to move on with the agenda? Excellent. Thank you. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. We will get to your item in just a moment. Number 2 is a declaration of interest. Are there any declarations of interest that need to be declared? Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to our delegation for today, which is item 3A. Mr. Rodriguez, welcome. You are here to provide us with a redevelopment project. So with that, I'll just ask CAO Wingrove, did you want to do any introduction before we begin?
No, I think we're happy to have Andrew here to give us an update. It's been a little while since we've been together, an awful lot of time. And so really looking forward to getting everyone caught up again. And over to you, Andrew. Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Rodriguez, I noticed that your presentation is not extensively long, so I'd recommend we just go ahead and let you move through the presentation, and then I'll look for hands for questions once you've had a chance to conclude the content.
Okay, that sounds great. And on my end, I just shared the presentation. So do you see it up on your end? Okay, fantastic. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to provide an update with the project. It has been an exciting time since the last update with lots of movement. So as part of my update today, I'm going to be going over the overall project schedule. So the focus now is in construction, but we're going to look forward in terms of the first resident date and what are some of the upcoming activities. We'll spend some time focusing on completed tasks and key project milestones since the last update to the task force. We'll provide an update on construction in terms of the look ahead and what the contractor is focusing on at the moment. I'll provide a financial update and an overview of what the change order or change management process is in relation to changes during construction. So what we would refer to as post-contract changes. And then we'll open it up to any questions at the end of the presentation. So from a schedule standpoint, you'll recognize this graphic over here. We're now in the construction phase where the dashed green lines over here were the early works that started last year in the fall. Right now, we're seeing construction extend out until the end of 2026 with the first resident date forecasted in the first quarter of 2027. I do want to make an important distinction here because the contract with the general contractor does not go till the end of 2026. It's closer to the fall. However, in this time period, we also have to consider that there's going to be furniture and equipment delivery and installation, which would happen post-occupancy. There's going to be training for staff with the new building processes and systems. And one of the biggest items during this stage is also the ministry pre-occupancy inspection. So they'll come in and they need the place to be what they call hotel ready. So it's got, in addition to having occupancy, the furniture and equipment is installed. There's going to be beds in the resident rooms. There's going to be linen. They then inspect the whole home before providing the licenses or the approval to admit the first residents. Or if there's any rework or items that require rectification, that gets factored into the timeline. So this is why we don't have a precise date right now in early 2027. We've left it as first quarter 2027. And as we get closer and we have a better understanding of when this ministry inspection will occur and what the outcome is, we'll be able to refine that a lot closer in coordination with the County of Grey. So to highlight some of the key tasks and project milestones that have been achieved since the last update with the task force. So from a municipal standpoint, the site plan approval and agreement was executed, building permit issuance, both of which were key items to provide to the ministry and for the project to be in a position to commence construction. The project received approval from the Ministry of Long-Term Care to proceed to tender after receiving approval of the second package of technical drawings, or the working drawing submission. And after tender closed, a extensive package went to the Ministry of Long-Term Care, following which they reviewed and provide County of Grey with the approval to construct. A construction kickoff meeting was held with the contractor, members from County of Grey, and members from the consulting team, including Colliers and the prime consultant, Casey and Ted Handy, and groundbreaking ceremony that occurred as well. I will note that as part of the ministry's approval to construct, there were 2 or 3 items that they asked for: schedule, insurance, bonds, that are key documents that they needed before releasing funds to the owner. And so the last update we received is that all of those check marks have been met, and the province expects to flow in the next reporting period a significant sum of money in the order of $10.37 million. And this is part of the construction funding subsidy top-up, where operators can carve out an amount and receive it upfront to help with some initial payments to the contractor and reduce the loan amount. So that was great news for the project, and we anticipate over the next month or month and a half that payment will flow through to the operator. In terms of construction update and look ahead, the big focus has been on site mobilization after our construction kickoff meeting. So these are our photos that most of the folks here will be familiar with, either through the groundbreaking ceremony or just local presence in the community. So a big part of the strategy for this project was to complete the early works ahead of the contractor going out to tender and being awarded the contract, to allow them to speed up their overall timeline between now and occupancy, and to reduce the risk of them having unforeseen conditions below the ground and pricing that as part of their bid to reflect risk pricing or unknowns. So this shows the state of the site that the contractor is taking over, which is, quite honestly, they were impressed with the state of the site that was handed over to them to start construction activities. So their focus will be on site mobilization, surveying, verification of site topography and benchmarks. So understanding the existing conditions prior to them commencing work versus what was in the contract documents. Shop drawings, submissions, and reviews. This is really driven by the overall construction schedule and lead time of items that are needed to support the construction schedule. This is the process of the contractor submitting drawings on equipment, systems, products for review by the design team to ensure they're in conformance with the contract document. So this is part of the discussion every 2 weeks when the team meets with the contractors, and is well underway to support the construction sequence and first items and long lead time items that are needed for the project. Excavation and the subsurface structure will be the first activities that Malil Blamey, or the contractor, will focus on. And from the owner's side, through the contractor, just wanted to comment that there will be third-party inspection and testing throughout the project, be it soils, compaction, concrete, steel erection, roofing, building envelope. These have been closely defined with the design team and are part of the contract documents as we work through with the contractor to ensure we have these checks and balances in place from a quality standpoint. Okay, so the brief financial update is, at this stage, there's a $0 forecasted variance at completion based on the upset limit that was approved by Grey County last year. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about our process for budget and cost management. So we have a detailed budget with various line items for construction costs, soft costs, land associated costs, other costs, furniture and equipment. And for each of these line items, we track commitments against the budget line items, an estimate to complete. So in other words, based on what's been committed for each line item, what is remaining. And this allows us to come up with an estimate at completion for each line item and an estimate at completion for the overall project. And that puts us in a position to report to the task force members of Grey County if there is a variance at completion and what that number may be. So from a process standpoint, this is something that we update in the form of a report that we provide monthly, but it's something that we track dynamically. As soon as there's a known change or a known commitment, it's something that goes into our tool to have cost predictability and accuracy for the remainder of the project. We also track contingency very closely as the project progresses. In the next slide, I will go over the proposed change process, but at this stage, there is no contingency that has been used yet for the project, so we're at 0% usage of contingency. And the final bullet here is just to give the task force a sense that on a recurring basis, we're working closely with the contractor to obtain cash flow projections. This will be especially important when the finance team is starting to take draws from Infrastructure Ontario for the loan. And so this is something on a monthly basis we will be getting updated schedules, cash flow projections, and this information will in turn be used for forecasting the timing and the amounts of the loan. The last slide here I have before questions is just a proposed chart for treating changes during construction. And so with this form of contract or delivery method, which is design, bid, build, there are changes post-contract that are anticipated. They're known unknowns. And so just to give you an example, this could be due to authorities having jurisdiction, the Ministry of Long-Term Care, local authorities. It can be unforeseen site conditions. It can be design coordination errors or issues that arise. So there is a post-contract contingency line item that has been set up specifically to as a risk mitigation measure to address these items. What it's not intended for is scope changes or owner requests or items that were afterthoughts. This is strictly to deal with what is part of the contract and where we can expect some changes. So the overall process here would be if there is an RFI or a request for information issued and there is a change, there would be an assessment done to see is there going to be an impact to schedule or cost. And if there isn't any, the design team would reply to the contractor with the instruction. But if there's an impact to cost or schedule or both, what would be prepared is a proposed contemplated notice or a PCN. There's then an opportunity for County of Grey to review and validate the scope of this contemplated change. The onus wouldn't be on County of Grey, but it would be reviewed and recommended by the consulting team ahead of time. So this would be reviewed then with County of Grey to ensure that there isn't anything missed or this makes sense from the owner's perspective. Then the PCN gets issued to the by the contractor by the design team. The contractor then submits a quotation with any impacts from cost and time. This gets reviewed by the consulting team and a recommendation is proposed to County of Grey. What's proposed in this flow chart here is that if this falls within funded and budgeted post-contract contingency, that this would go to the CAO for review and approval and potential escalation to the task force as required. And if it doesn't fall within what's been budgeted with post-contract contingency, this would immediately go to task force and council for review and approval. Once the changes are executed, it goes back to the contractor for full signature, and the process is typical contract administration, as is the rest of the scope for the construction project. So if it's hard, it may be hard to believe, but this slide had 10 times more detail. So I tried to simplify it as much as I could to cover the key salient points, but I do recognize that there's a lot of information and this is a busy slide. So I'm happy to answer any questions on this process. If there's anything I've missed or anyone wants to drill into further detail or any other questions for the remainder of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll open it to the committee floor for questions for clarification. And if there's a particular slide involved, let us know, and then we'll be able to back up to that slide for greater understanding. So at this point in time, I'm looking around the room for any hands of any questions. Yes, Warden Mill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andrew, you talked about right at the start of your presentation about the deficiencies. Once we get to that point, if there are any, I'm sure there likely will be. The ministry walks through and gives their blessing. Does the county, as the owner of the project, do we get a similar opportunity to inspect for deficiencies?
Yeah, that's a great question, and absolutely. So well before the ministry coming in, there's a typical process where the design team goes through room by room and identifies deficiencies, whether it's some paint missing or a scratch in the flooring, etc. And so we strongly encourage owners to be involved and integrated as part of that process. And so this allows one list to go forward to the contractor that identifies deficiencies that the design team will bring up, that the owner will bring up. These then go to the contractor so they can track and address them. And this happens prior to the ministry coming in.
And if I might, just to follow up, who arbitrates whether it is in fact a significant deficiency or is it, negligible, so to speak?
So that's dictated by the contract. If there's something in there that hasn't been met, like if there's a scratch on the wall or the floor as an example, then that's got a scratch, that's something that would be part of the scope of the contractor to rectify. So this is I'd say a typical process at the end of the project. And what we would try to do based on the schedule and how this project has been sequenced is not wait till the very end and then go through the whole building. Some areas will naturally advance ahead of others, so we will try to stagger and sequence the deficiency reviews so that while the contractor is finishing some of the areas that will be completed last, they can start tackling deficiencies on some other areas in parallel.
Very good. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Councilor Wright.
Thanks, Chair. And through you, thanks for the time today, Andrew. Just a couple questions that they're going to come back to probably the detailed budget, which you are going to be providing monthly that you refer to. But from a committee perspective, as we move through the project, for instance, or for example, if a drywalling contract came in at $300,000 under budget, how are you looking to deliver that type of news or that structure back to the committee as we progress through this? And I look back to the value engineering portion in 2023. So we changed the scope of the plans. But if we don't have the reporting on budget to actual to some degree as a committee, how are we going to stay on top of potentially delivering this project actually under budget? So I get 0% variance. That's great if we don't go over budget. But what would be even better would be if we can execute in the project and come in under budget. So how do you intend to assist the committee along the route in reporting?
Okay, so from a delivery model standpoint, this project is design, bid, build, where there's one contract with the general contractor, which means they take the risk with their subcontractors, whether the cost to award the packages is higher or lower. So the risks and the benefits go entirely to the general contractor. The model which I believe you may be referring to, where the benefits go to the owner, are with the construction management delivery model, where if prices were to go down, let's say with the drywall contractor, that benefit goes entirely to the owner. But on the other hand, if costs go up with some contractors like mechanical or electrical, that cost is also passed on to the owner. So I'm going to say a year and a half ago, there was a direction or decision made to go design, bid, build with the general contractor versus the construction management route. And the underlying, one of the key reasons, and I'll ask Madam CEO perhaps to add more if there's something I've missed here, was cost certainty. In other words, when the project is tendered, you have one lump sum and it doesn't leave the door open till the end of construction, where there may be some variabilities with packages and additional tenders. So in this case, these types of overages or unders would not impact gray county, so to speak. What we have in our budget and forecast is the contracted value with your general contractor, and we have a line item for post-contract contingency, which is a percentage, and that's typically the practice we follow for new builds, and renovations would have a higher percentage because there's more risk. But this is let me know if that answers your question, and perhaps I'll just pass over to Madam CEO if there's anything further you'd like to add.
Okay, let me go to CAO Wingrove, and then I'll go to see if there's a follow-up from Councillor Gray.
Yeah, so just to follow on Andrew's comments and the information that was in the presentation, our focus around this table and for the team that's on the ground and looking at this is really managing changes and deciding on change orders, trying to stick to the plans that have been already created. We hope that, we've thought this out 100% and know exactly what we need and intend to proceed on that basis. It's where we'll get into issues with overages are either something completely unforeseen or problem, and then at that time we're going to have a conversation around this table, or there's something that we identify that we want to change. So we're initiating that, and if we initiate a change, then we're the ones that are going to see the increase in cost on that basis.
I think you largely did answer the question, Andrew. And I'll circle back to like the value engineering again, for example. If there was components that were value engineered out of the original idea beyond just change of scope, where might there be opportunity within the teams to evaluate some of those, if you scaled back a more desirable roof, for example, where there was opportunity to scale back up, so to speak. So I guess that's the example. I think you answered it pretty good though, so thanks.
Okay. I don't see any other hands. So at this point then, we would entertain a motion to receive. It's recommended that the presentation materials provided by Colliers project leaders regarding a project update on the Rockwood Terrace redevelopment be received for information. May I ask for a mover? Thank you. Moved by Councillor McQueen, seconded by Councillor McKay. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that motion is carried. We do not have any correspondence on the list. Thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez, for that update, and thank you for providing us with the information in advance that we could study. Most appreciated.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks. Have a good rest of the afternoon. We do not have any correspondence, and we did not add any other business at the beginning of the agenda, so I will go to Councillor Max.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I know it's not on the agenda, but we have our finance staff with us, and Andrew did speak about some of the flow-through dollars from the province. Would it be appropriate to get just a little bit more information from finance on how that's going to work and when we start making interest payments and some of that information?
Certainly, it is a follow-up to the presentation that was published on the agenda, so I think that would be appropriate if we use it at this point in time. If there's anything that staff would like to add.
As part of the redevelopment calculations, we looked at the construction flow subsidy and we determined that it was to our advantage to take a portion of it up front. So they give $35 per resident bed per day. And you could take that over 25 years, or you could take and convert $15 of it up front. They use what's called a discounted net present value. So at the end of the exercise, it was to our advantage to take that $15 per bed per day up front because it reduces our borrowing costs. That's what Andrew was referring to, and it's like $10.4 million that he's saying that they should be transferring to us in the next 4 to 6 weeks. Malul has not given a cash flow statement yet. So it's our budget was based on some estimates of when construction would start, when we would cash flow money. At this point, I'm working under the assumption until they prove me different, that between the money we had in reserves, which is just around $7 million, just over 10 million, but that probably should get us through to the end of the year. And we wouldn't be entering into any construction interest by having a loan with IO until we get into 2025.
Okay, and CAO?
Oh, Andrew's gone. Okay, I was gonna ask him. We just haven't received the cash flow. Do you know, Randy? Did you talk about it at the update meeting?
Last construction meeting update, which was on Monday or Tuesday this week, I think, right? They were anticipating to provide that to us before the end of this week. So we anticipate receiving those soon. And that's gonna give us the information that Mary Lou and her team requires in terms of trying to figure out, okay, like Mary Lou said, we anticipate that we have enough cash, so to speak, between that payment from MLTC and what's in reserves for the remainder of the year. But until we see those numbers, we'll be able to confirm that assumption at this stage. And therefore, we wouldn't then need to do any draws per se from IO until 2025 is what we're anticipating. But we'll be able to confirm that once we receive those cash flow estimates from MD, which is anticipated to arrive soon.
Okay, excellent. Is there any follow-up?
No.
Okay.
Important, no.
Will the contractor be billing us on a monthly basis or how are they flow? Oh, it is, okay.
And it's, Colliers and the team that's those the invoices come to us and to Colliers. Colliers assesses and checks everything and then sends back an assurance to the county that they verified that what's in those invoices is correct. And then at that point, we sign off on it.
Good, thank you.
Any further questions on that particular avenue?
I would just add one thing that, as we go forward, there may be times when it's appropriate to have some of these financial discussions in closed session. So we'll talk about that carefully with clerks if the need arises. But there may be situations where it's prudent to have those discussions in closed as to protect the county's interests when it comes to contingency funds and that sort of thing. So just putting that out there that if you see that on an agenda beforehand, that's the reason why we would want to have that conversation. Certainly, bottom line numbers and everything will always be public, but there may be some discussions that, as I said, it's best in the county's best interest to have those enclosed.
Anything further? Okay, yes.
Thank Manager. Kim, who will be doing the site inspections on behalf of the county? Which county staff represent that team?
Randy's been the on-site guy for the most of it, but some of this has been, like, do you remember the one consultant, EXP? Right, so EXP, they have some ongoing responsibility for that work. And then there's Rami, who's a Colliers employee, he's kind of like Andrew's counterpart, but it's very specific to what's happening from a construction perspective.
Yeah, and there's, as Andrew indicated through his presentation, there's a number of other inspection services that are required throughout the construction phase. So as Andrew indicated, we've reviewed and vetted those through the design team in terms of what inspection services require. And MD is currently getting quotes for all those inspection services as we speak. They're hoping again by the end of this week to provide that back to us to be able to confirm who we would recommend them to hire for inspection services to continue through the construction phase. So those would be, whether it's, I think Andrew indicated, steel inspections and other things like that throughout the course of the construction project. So we're hoping that could be done through one firm that can provide those services, but we won't know the results of that until we get all those quotes back. And which, as I know, should be imminent. We'll do a quick review of those because we need to. They're starting. We'll hopefully be starting foundation works and excavation works. So we need some inspection services when they start doing that, which is hopefully starting very soon. So we need to quickly in terms of when we get those estimates to be able to approve those inspection services. But so that's just give you an update in terms of where that's at in the process. So we won't know who that is until we get those estimates back.
Thank you. So they'll be working very closely with our building department. Well, West Spring Building Department.
Yeah,
Which is also Chatsworth Building Department.
yes, for sure.
Yeah, I have confidence.
Just saying. Oh, yeah.
No, and West Spring Building Department's already been engaged by MB. They've already had conversations, again, letting them know on their construction schedule, their phases, making sure that whenever they're required to do their inspections, that they're ready to go. So, so that's conversations already happened as well. So the inspection services will be primarily working, obviously doing inspections on site, and they'll be reporting back through us, through Colliers and the design team to confirm that, yes, we're on track, or no, there needs to be some changes here. Thanks, Ray. Yeah, of course.
One thing, I think maybe just, I don't know if this was raised, or some of you might have met him at the event at the end of June, but Malul's site super is Dave, and Dave is here, he lives here in Old Sound. And I know that Keezy and some others have worked with him on a number of other projects and think very highly of Dave and his skills. Our experience here when we did the renovation of this building was the site super is make or break in the success of the project. If you have a great one, you'll have a much easier time than one who's maybe a little further away or not so engaged. From the conversations that we've had with him so far in his very early days, but he seems very engaged and very competent, and that I think helps us to, feel a little more confident too, that there's somebody that's really, gonna do a good job for us.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on other business? Okay, well, I might just add in the other business that indeed the groundbreaking was an excellent event, and it was so good to see the community participation, including the representation and the participation of the residents who had come over. So there you go. So on behalf of all of us, thank you very much for executing such a wonderful beginning to the actual activity that people are.
That was all Rob.
Yes, that people are being able to actually watch it as it grows and as it changes. So it was lovely to be part of that event. Thank you. So with that, then our next meeting date is to be determined. Madam Deputy Clerk, is there a range on when that might be?
And it's my understanding that they're to be called as needed as we try to get into things. I don't have a set timeline.
My hope is, again, if there's a key change, if there's a reason to meet, we'll be calling a meeting so that we can get decisions made in a timely fashion. I think everybody's big concern is that they get the approvals that they need for the shop drawings for the foundation so that they can get that done. So I think once that happens and they start with that work, I think I would be inclined to pull together a meeting just to say, this is what they're doing right now. This is how long they think it's going to take, and what the next step is after that. So you're aware. And I think by the time we get to that point, we should be I'm thinking we'll be able to meet again in early September. At the same time, by then we should have the official cash flow from them, and then we can have another discussion about money.
Excellent question.
No, just a comment, Madam Chair. I think at some point when major milestones in the building are hit, it would be nice for the committee to have an opportunity to have site visits and updated that way. So if that would be available.
Sure.
A lot of us have
Because
invested a lot of time in this project. And
Right.
it'd be nice to see the big milestones.
Right, so they have a site meeting every other week.
Yeah.
Where people are getting together and update and stuff like that. So, I'm just thinking out loud that wasn't it Tuesday? That maybe if that would work for people that, after a Tuesday meeting on this with the group there, that it would be good for a lot of the people that you might want to speak to or hear from are already on site. We could go up then, but we can make it anytime.
Leave it with you.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Andrew didn't know this, but part of this construction project, because of the magnitude of it, is doing some mock-ups as well. Some mock-ups of the rooms, what they'll look like. We haven't seen the full construction schedule yet, but the full detailed construction schedule will include some mock-up timeframes as well. So that might be an opportunity so you can see, here's what the room's actually gonna look like. So before we build the other 127 rooms, here's room 1.
Right.
So there may be some really good times for the task force to look at those mock-up designs.
Excellent. Thank you, Warden Mill.
So when you say they're gonna make some mock-ups, does that mean they're gonna be renting space somewhere else in West Grey or in Durham specifically to literally make a room?
So we haven't heard the details or seen the details yet, but we're hopeful that they'll be able to do most of the mock-ups on site, but we're not sure. Because depending on where it's at in the construction stage. Yeah.
I was involved with the new Fergus built, the hospital down there, and that's exactly what they did. They rented an empty warehouse and they literally built rooms in the warehouse to walk through and, you could see how much room you had to swing the cat, so to speak.
Yeah.
In this day and age with all the technology we have, I struggle to see the value in any of that, but I'm not a construction person either, so.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Part of it
Interesting.
is the building envelope too, in terms of the tightness of it, in order to be able to achieve some of those net zero ready targets as well. So there's some mock-up testing as well as part of that. So yeah, so we haven't seen it, like I said, the full details yet, if they're doing that all on site. Construction schedule for it to create some off-site works.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands. So with that, then we will need a motion to adjourn, and I'll look for a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Gregg, seconded by Warden Mill. Any discussion? All those in favor? Committee meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
I didn't want to break that song to Jordan.
Yeah.